28 years after Gremlins first had its premiere, and what do you think it is about this story that now, almost 3 decades later, still really resonates and excites audiences when they see it?
I have no idea. You know, you make these movies and you never know whether people are going to like them or whether they're going to make money or any of that kind of stuff. And one of the reasons that this picture, I think, has had some legs was because it came out of nowhere. Nobody expected anything from it. It was a pretty under-the-radar kind of movie. I've long since believed that if the same movie came out a year earlier or a year later or a different month or against other pictures, it might not have been successful. I mean, you just really don't know. It's whatever's in the zeitgeist at that time. And for some reason, this particular picture, at that particular month, at that particular year, was very appealing to people. And it certainly shocked Warner Brothers because they really thought it was a piece of crap. You know, a lot of directors are lucky to get one picture in their career that does that kind of surprise business, and I am that director because that's the only one I ever had.
What? Same thing.
Didn't make money.
No, it made money. For me, it was just a job, and I got it lucky, and that was it.
Well, Dick is the kind of actor, you know, who can play big parts in small movies and small parts in big movies, and he's been in a lot of virtually every movie I've ever made. And the parts are, sometimes they're one scene, sometimes they're as short as one line, and sometimes, like in Gremlins and Gremlins 2, they're like the second, third lead. And that's the great thing about being a character actor, is that you can go from movie to movie, and Dick is in my movies because I grew up watching him in the movies, and I always thought he was great. And when I finally had a chance to make a movie and have him be in it, we hit it off, and I thought, this is a lot of fun. And it was a guy I always liked to watch on the screen. And so, any opportunity I had to be able to give him another job, it was okay with me. It was okay with him too. Well, I was hired because I had made cheap horror pictures, and Spielberg was starting a company, and he wanted to make a cheap horror picture. He wanted to make it in Oregon. He wanted to make it for very little money, non-union. And Chris's script, which was a spec script, which was written entirely to get him jobs, not necessarily to be produced, was much more violent and dark than the movie that resulted from it. And the Gremlins were pretty vicious. They ate the dog, and they cut the mom's head off and bounced it downstairs. And there were a bunch of articles. Somebody got hold of the script, and the New York Post wrote an expose that Steven Spielberg was making this disgusting, bad taste movie. And I think Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel and some other people who were sort of on the anti-horror movie bandwagon at the time got behind it. And there was a lot of bad press about the movie that everybody was afraid this was going to be. And then it turned out to not be that, because while we were making it, it became much more apparent that the Gremlins were more funny than they were scary. And so the movie kind of changed while we were doing it, and it became much more whimsical than had been expected. So, I mean, my issue has always been when I'm working for studios and they see the first couple of days dailies, they always call me and they say, is this a horror movie or a comedy? And they get very confused. But I happen to think that the two things go together quite well. And in this case, it's probably 50-50. It's probably kind of as much of a comedy as it is a horror picture. Anything to say about that? No.
All right, Dick, so you have appeared very much in every single one of Joe Dante's films. Is there a particular film or performance that stands out more than the others in all the films you've appeared in with him?
No, not really. There were certain parts I like. Naturally, Gremlins 1 and 2. When I first saw Mr. Futterman, I thought it was I'd have to play with a German accent. And I like the howling. That's it.
So to continue on with your career, you know, it's going on about 6 decades now almost that you've been acting. You know, such a wide range of films, movies, television, voiceover work as well too. Everything from the original Little Shop of Horrors to Terminator to Gremlins, from television programs like Star Trek Deep Space Nine to doing voiceover work on Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. There is this, the documentary is being worked on about your life right now, about your film career right now, called That Guy Dick Miller. What's the progress going on that?
You just took away my, I was going to put in a commercial for the film. It's a good documentary. It's about a character actor. We've been in the business 60 years as a character actor. And it has to be seen. You gotta go.
Joe, you always, in all your films, you have such a great ensemble of actors, from, Dick Miller to Zach Galligan. It's everyone here, no matter how big or how small the part is, they always bring something special to the role. And one person in particular kind of stood out, for me anyways, was in Gremlins and Gremlins 2 was Keye Luke as Mr. Wing. He has a special sort of connection with the Chinese here in that he was actually the artist who painted the original lobby murals inside the theater back in 1927 prior to the theater's opening. What was that like working with Keye Luke? Because he has such an amazing career, from the Charlie Chan films to playing the original Kato in the Green Hornet movies, and everything else there on stage, the Flower Drum Song. What was some of the experiences? What was it like working with him on Gremlins and Gremlins 2?
Well, Key is like one of those actors that you grew up watching, and he predated me by quite a bit. I was working with Greg Garbo in The Painted Veil. And also he designed the original press book for King Kong. He'd been around for quite a while and was very respected in the Asian community. And it took a lot of parts that I think he probably would rather not have, but that's the way things were at the time. But he was a fabulous guy, and like all the older actors that I've worked with, filled with stories and lore about Hollywood in the old days. And one of the real perks about getting to make movies is to get to meet people that you grew up watching and that you really have a feeling for. And I've worked with an endless number of character people who go back to the 30s, and I've never been disappointed with a single one of them.
Now, continuing on with the casting aspect of it, the acting, in terms of casting Billy, you went with unknown at the time, with Zach Galligan. How did you discover him? What brought him to your attention?
Zach had been in a movie that Tom Schiller made called Nothing Lasts Forever, which was hardly released at all. So people really didn't know who he was, but we went through a lot of up-and-coming talent. I mean, people like Emilio Estevez and Tom Hanks, and a lot of people that we read for the part, and many of whom were very good. But because it was an Amblin picture, and because Stephen was very involved with the casting, it was pretty rigorous. And Zach was the one guy who came in. He seemed to be kind of guileless, and he was playing a part that was written in the original script for an 11-year-old. When the reason he has a friend that Corey Feldman plays who's 11 years old is because in the original script he was 11 too. And when Warner Brothers came on board, they said, well, the hero's got to be older. You don't want to have a movie just for kids, and so they bumped up his age. But the part didn't change that much, so it was kind of a challenge for him to be able to play this juvenile part and try to play it a little older than it was originally written. And he was he was green, but he was very malleable and easy to work with. And when you're working with puppets, it's very demanding. I mean, it's not as bad as having to work with nothing, like if you're doing stop motion and you're just staring at a blank spot. There are puppets on the set, but nonetheless, they break down. And sometimes the puppet take is better than the actor take. And the actor says, well, that was my best take. And you go, yeah, but the puppet looked good here. And it's just something the actors have to get along with when they're going to make this kind of picture. I don't believe they were ever on the set. It was all done in post-production. And Howie had this baby character that he had been doing very popularly. And he sort of adapted that voice into Gizmo, and we came up with a whole vocabulary. I mean, if you ever buy the Gizmo Furby, there's there's a whole booklet that comes with it, explains all of the, you know, the caca poo poo dialogue that he had. Everybody did voices. I did some voices. I mean, everybody does them because they're Gremlins, you know. So you can do whatever you want. And whenever you get stuck and you needed a gremlin laugh or something, if you're mixing, I just go up and do it. But it was a discovery that it was a journey of discovery. I mean, literally, we didn't know what we were doing when we made the movie. There was no technology that really existed at the time that was going to allow us to make this picture unless we discovered it ourselves. And Chris Wallace, the effects guy, really did break the mold in terms of making like a Muppets on cocaine kind of movie, and with these puppets that, you know, were shot in various speeds and backwards and forwards and sped up and slowed down and all these tricks that we had to do to make them look like they were real. The one thing they couldn't do is they really couldn't walk very convincingly, because we puppeteered some stuff with marionettes and it just looked like exactly what it was, so we never used any of that. And Gizmo originally was only supposed to be around for the first couple of reels, and then he was going to turn into Stripe. And when Steven decided that he liked Gizmo and he thought it would be cool if Gizmo stuck around for the whole movie, everybody was banging their heads against the wall because this little bucket of bolts that we made was only really good enough for like a couple of wide shots. And we said, now he's got to have close-ups, he's got to have emotions, he's got to... So we had to build a giant Gizmo head for close-ups and get him to act, and you know, and it was a movie that was pretty much made under the gun, but it was fun. It just took forever.
Now, Dick, can you go a little bit on how you first got into acting?
Oh, God. You must have heard the story before. When I came out of the service, I ran out of money, and I figured it must be something I could do on a GI Bill. And I looked in the papers, and there were upholsterers making $100 a week. That was good money then. So I went down to got a pamphlet from the Veterans Administration, and I saw there was a New York School of Upholstery. And I went down there and I filled out the papers, and the guy said, well, I'll see you Monday morning. I said, what time? He said, 8 o'clock. I said, that's no good. I don't go to bed till 3 o'clock in the morning. How about night class? He said, we don't have night class anymore. This is a true story. So I looked in the paper that I had there, and it said the New York School of Acting, New York School of Upholstery, New York Theater School of Dramatic Arts. It was right next to it. And I called him up. I said, what time do your classes start? He said, it depends on your workshop, 9 or 11 o'clock. I said, you guarantee me 11 o'clock, and I come down there. He says, all right, you come down there. And that's it. I hadn't really thought of being an actor.
You would have been a damn good upholsterer.
So one of the other really great things about Gremlins, and about a lot of your movies, is your long collaboration with Jerry Goldsmith. You know, one of the all-time great music composers for film. What was your working relationship like with him?
I inherited Jerry on the Twilight Zone movie. He was hired before I was, and we got along very, very well. When I was going to do Gremlins, I thought of him for Gremlins, and he played me in his house. This is before all the Yamaha stuff and all the electronics which he went into, but this was, in those days, the composer would play you on the piano what the music was, and he played the Gremlin rag for me on the piano, and I said, this sounds like circus music. I said, you sure this is what you want to do? And he said, no, I think it'll work. And of course, you know, duh. He was right. But it takes a little bit of finessing to translate what a music is going to sound like with an orchestra from what it sounds like on a piano. And of course, I eventually figured that out. But Jerry was a very important part of any success that I've ever had. And he's one of the few geniuses that I've worked with in this business. And when he finally passed away, the picture that I'd done was the last thing that he did. In fact, he couldn't even really quite finish it after the last drill was done. It had to be done by somebody else. But it was a great loss, not just to me, but to music in general. I mean, this was one of the premier movie composers of our time, and we had a shorthand that we used to work with. And I don't read music. I'm not that musical, but we really connected on a basic level. And what we would say on every movie is that we came into a rough spot or we had some scene that wasn't working, we'd say, "Don't worry, Jerry will save it."
So, this is for both of you, for both Joe and Dick. In the original story, and also in the novelization for Gremlins, Mr. Futterman is killed, but in the final cut of the movie, he survives. And was that something that was decided upon in the middle of filming, after the fact, or when was that decision made, and what was the reason for making it?
Dick begged me. He said, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me if I want to be in the sequel." That's not actually true, but in the novelization, which was written by a guy named George Keye, who never saw the movie, he wrote it from the script, and it's one of the best novelizations ever. And because he came up with a whole lot of explanations of what Gremlins were, and it was really clever. In the movie, yes, he does get run over with a snowplow. But in post-production, we decided that we would add a radio in the background that said that Mr. Futterman was at the hospital. And because we thought, well, if there really is a sequel, and no one, believe me, was really seriously thinking about it, it would be good to bring him back. And in fact, it was great because when we did bring him back in the sequel, we had this whole backstory about how everybody thought he was crazy, and he was seeing things, and his wife had to calm him down, and it was really funny, and he got a lot out of it.
I didn't know at the time. I thought I died in the house there. The Gremlins got me. And that was it. And it wasn't for later. When they told me, "Was the radio explains the whole thing. You're okay." I did not know I was alive.